stops making sense. You can get help for yourself or a loved one and make sense of life again.
Good morning.
For information, treatment referral, and most importantly, help, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
The following program is paid for by Barbara Arnwine.
The topics, views, and opinions expressed on the air and via All Igniting Change with Barbara Arnwine, platforms by host Barbara Arnwine Esquire, guests, and supporters are their own and are independent of any organization, entity. Nothing said on the show or any of its platforms constitutes a client-attorney relationship or serves as legal advice counsel. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to Igniting Change, its platforms, or the show's host. It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Arnwine.
Get up, stand up.
To Igniting Change. Oh, it's so good to have you listening to our show today. We have so many great things to cover. This is an important day. Are you out there getting your vote on? You're voting in Georgia. You're voting all over the country. There are elections today. Make sure, Mississippi, all of the rest of you, make sure that you're out there voting today. Don't miss it. This is an important primary for your state. Get your vote on. Don't be dissuaded. And call up everybody in your state and tell them, have you voted? Make sure that they didn't early vote, that they're voting today. We have a great show for you today. My wonderful radio co-host, Daryl Jones, is not able to join us at this time because he is attending to his family. They've had a loss in the family, and they're having a service today. So please give your hearts out to him and his family. So we, really miss him, and we hope to have a really great show today because, we always bring you the best. Today's show is called The Transformative History of African American Women in the United States, Part 1. Yes, everybody, this is Women's History Month. And last month we did African American history. But we are ready to make sure that today we are giving all the credit, all the attention to the history of African American women in this nation. And we have brought up with us some of the best guests possible. We are going to not only talk about Black women and Women's History Month, we're going to also talk about President Biden's State of the Union address, which everybody is still talking about, and we're going to talk about the fight for voting rights. And we have with us two amazing guests. Oh, they're returning guests. You've heard them before, so you know you're in for a treat when I say their names and talk about their backgrounds. Our guests include Professor Ernest J. Quarles. He is a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and he's a member of the African American Policy Forum's board, which we serve on together. He's a practicing attorney, a civil rights advocate, and educator, and former student of the late Honorable Judge A. Leon Hickenbotham, who served on the Third Circuit of Appeals, and he was mentored by the late Professor Derek Bell, who was an instrumental author, instrumental instructor at Harvard and at NYU. And so it is our pleasure. Hey, Professor Quarles, good morning, good afternoon. It's so great to have you, sir.
So great to be here, Barbara. And, I just want to, say, well, first of all, my prayers are with Daryl and love with him and his family in this time. And I want to just say, thank you for everything you do. I mean, you literally are setting, the world on fire through your radio show and your activism. And we couldn't be more blessed. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and we are just so delighted that you joined us. Also joining us today is one of our star guests always, and she makes it possible for the Transformative Justice Coalition to do its work. She is the treasurer of the Transformative Justice Coalition's board of directors, and she is an amazing leader, former state senator for the state of Massachusetts, and she also is one of the best advocates for the African-American community in Boston and the whole totality of Massachusetts. She's quite the leader, and I'm talking about none other than Dianne Wilkerson. Hey, Dianne. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I guess hopefully she will be joining us soon and will be able to participate. I know that she was scheduled, so we will see what happens. Well, Ernie, I just left the U.S. Senate, and they were having a hearing. In fact, they're going to have two hearings today. The Senate Judiciary Committee is having a full committee meeting of the full Senate Judiciary Committee. And when I was there, they actually had a great turnout. And I left as Senator LaFonza R. Butler from California had finished her questioning. And I want to give a big shout out to Senator Butler because she chairs the Senate's Judiciary Committee subcommittee on the Constitution. And on March 1st, she had a hearing in Alabama, and it was focused on racial discrimination in voting in Alabama and the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which had just been introduced on the 29th of February. And she was magnificent. But I also had to hear from Lindsey Graham, from Lee, from Cornyn, from a number of these senators who were basically saying that they don't think there's any discrimination in voting going on anymore. Yes, they did, Ernie. I kid you not. They said there's no discrimination in voting. They also were saying that they didn't think that there were, any voting problems going on at all in our country. And so it was, fascinating. Oh, and they were basically saying that the law was unnecessary, that we don't need any law. Of course, I've written, if you woke people, if you're listening and you're saying, that's really crazy that people are saying that there's no discrimination in voting. How do I help prove that there is? Go to my website. Go to the TJC's website. It's called, you can find us at tjcoalition.org. tjcoalition.org. And if you go there, you're going to see the 72 forms of voter suppression. And if you go to votingrightsalliance.org, you're going to see the 72 forms of voter suppression. And let me be very clear. there are more forms of voter suppression than 72, but those are the ones that are documented that are in my write-up. So I want people to be very aware that there's a lot of deception still out here. In fact, one of the questions that Senator Welch asked of the panel, because there were two people on there who were trying to say that there's no voter discrimination, you don't need the law. He asked one question of those two people who were asserting that. He said, well, do you believe that the election was rigged in 2020? And do you think he got a yes or no answer? Ernie, I mean, it was quite amazing. But the denial, the denial that they engage in is just horrendous. And I was so disgusted. But at the same time, I was so proud of Durbin, and I was so proud of the Senate majority for having the hearing. And I was so proud to see LaFonza Butler up there. For those who don't know Senator Butler, you got to understand she is the third black woman, only the third to ever serve as a U.S. senator. And that says a lot. I understand we've been joined by Dianne Wilkerson. Hey, Dianne.
Hi, I'm here. Tuesday,
yes.
So it must be time for igniting change.
So welcome, Dianne. I was just talking about the fact that I was at the Senate for the full hearing led by Senator Durbin of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I was talking about how many of the senators like Graham and others were trying to pretend like there's no voter discrimination in our country right now, and that we don't need a John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to restore the Voting Rights Act to its full power as it used to be, and to stop all this discrimination in voting that's going on, nor, of course, that they even want to hear the words Freedom to Vote Act. But I was just talking about what that hearing was like. And, Dianne, I have a question for you. When you hear me say U.S. Senator LaFonza R. Butler, and I mentioned that she's the third African-American woman to serve in the Senate, what does that mean to you? Because you were a state senator. What does that mean?
I will tell you what I immediately think about is the irony, not only that we know who the previous two were, but that it's very likely that those of us over 40 knew them, right? Carol Moseley Braun, Kamala Harris, and now the senator from California, Senator Butler. That's right. You understand the irony of that? When you talk about the first, white senators or presidents or members of Congress, we're talking 300-400 years ago. All of the black women that have served in the Senate have served in our lifetime. And by the way, in our adult lifetime. How about that? Yes. That's what I think about. That's what I think about. I think about the fact that the heralding and the uniqueness and the celebration about Carol Moseley Braun being the first only makes sense if there's a second and a third. We're now on our third. We should have been on our fourth because the senator from North Carolina should be the woman who ran the Supreme Court justice. But, hopefully, thank God for second chances, we'll get a chance to right that. Because had she done dealt with, she would be a U.S. senator, right?
And think about it. Braun is the 1990s, people. We're not talking about
in the 90s.
10. We're talking about 1990s.
That's right.
Moseley Braun came in. She came on the heels of all the reaction to the Clarence Thomas nomination and that whole set of hearings when people really realized how horribly underrepresented women were in Congress. And she was a beneficiary of that wave of women who came in at that time. And so we're talking about recent history. What does it mean to you Ernie, when you think about that, because you got a daughter, and you know, what does it mean to you to hear when we talk about the fact that we're only on the third African American woman senator?